Hey artists, in this video I'm going to talk through a few important painting techniques to get you started as you begin working over top of your completed underpainting. So with acrylic paint, a lot of it comes down to having confidence with different tools and different brushes, which you can kind of see here. We will have some newer, more detailed brush sets to pull from. And one thing to note with these acrylic brushes, apart from the importance of strong, careful cleanup, is that you want to choose the right size brush for the job. And so on each one, if you look close to this is the ferrule where it's crimped, the bristles, there's always a number. And so this one here, 3/4 inch. This one is a 1/2 inch. It's in black, so it might be sort of hard to see. And then the other ones, if they are more tapered, rounded, they're just going to be organized by numbers. So like 8, 6, this one's a 4. And so you can get a sense of sort of larger to smaller is how I would have you work. Couple other brushes in the mix. We've got this really small detailed brush. Okay, it's a 0 brush. That's as small as we get. Any smaller than this, you're going to need a toothpick. We have an angled brush. Okay, I have some of these in a larger size at the back as well. Angled brushes can be great for cutting in. And then we also have a fan brush, which can be nice for blending. And this last technique here as well, dry brushing. Although I do a lot of my dry brushing just with a large square brush. For tools, the most important tool is going to be either a palette knife or a bunch of popsicle sticks. You can see over here that you never want to mix your paint with a brush. You want to mix your paint colors ahead of time using one of these tools. You can also paint with these tools in addition to the brushes. It just depends how thick you want to put that paint on, how you want it to be controlled, okay? So in terms of, like, I'll just pick a color here, maybe this golden raw sienna. I can pick it up with my palette knife. I can experiment with, what kind of mark making can I make? I'm just going on a little scrap here with the palette knife itself. And especially if you're wanting to get your paint on thicker, you might paint directly with a palette knife or with the popsicle stick that you used to mix the color. And then by contrast, if you're wanting more control, you will go ahead and use a brush. And you want that to be not wet, but always damp. So have some water. Okay, have some paper towels nearby. That's just going to let you start to get some control. So, right, different brushes will give us different thicknesses of line just by grabbing the right tool for the job. So often, like I said, I would start larger. Okay, so with larger brushes in larger areas, work my way to smaller areas as I paint from the back to the front. So for the brushes and the tools, that is kind of what you need to consider. Use those palette knives for some things, use different size brushes for other things. Okay, acrylic painting, believe it or not, is a lot about the paint thickness. So when you're getting some confidence in acrylics, I really just want everyone to think about manipulating the paint, how the paint comes out of the tube. So we're now going to move to these heavier bodied acrylics. And you can see that if I just take that first, like right out of the tube here, okay, it might be these little ones. That's what I'm using here, this light pink. It might be this brand. But if it's a heavier bodied acrylic, it's going to come out in sort of a nice medium to thick texture. So I'm just going to sort of pull this down with my mixing tool so you can get a sense of the general texture and paint thickness. Now, sometimes we want to make that even thicker, okay? And so in this second example, I'm going to incorporate in some modeling paste. So if you want to make your paint thicker, feel free to stir in, it's kind of a gray color, okay? You can scoop it up and really create some intense textures by using this modeling paste. So now that I've incorporated that in, don't worry about the gray color, it will not show. I can then, as I drag down, okay, it's much chunkier. It's giving me a thicker, more textured kind of a paint. And then last but not least, you may not want it quite so thick. A lot of control, a lot of good flow is going to come if you can manipulate your paint that comes out of the tube, making it thinner. And so for that, I'm going to recommend everyone use some of this all-purpose acrylic polymer, okay, GAC 100, funny name. You could also use a gloss or a matte medium, okay? You can use water, but I prefer these because it keeps the integrity of the color and it doesn't make it streaky. It's just gonna make it thinner. It's just gonna help it to flow. So as I incorporate the paint thinner, it's not lightening, it's not darkening my color. It's just gonna give me a nice pull down that's more translucent and acting a bit more like watercolor. So really with acrylics, what's funny is you have to kind of get used to how thin, how thick, or how in between you want that paint to be to give you the control that you're after. So take your brush and just play a little bit. Try pulling things around. Try getting used to those paint thicknesses. Okay. For color mixing, this is kind of the main key in addition to the paint thickness, is having a plan. So if I know I'm going to go and work into an area with different golden tones, I want to give myself various values and various versions that are friends on the color wheel. Same thing, if I'm in blues, the minimum would be giving myself, you know, a light, medium, and a dark. And we want to take a minute and just kind of go around our palette with the appropriate tool, pre-mix. If it starts to dry out, you can add in some matte medium, gloss medium, you can add in water. But you really want to have a plan so that those acrylics are going to blend and that you've mixed colors that are custom. Don't really want to just take the color that came straight out of this tube. You might want to lighten it, darken it, make it more neutral, and you want to use your color wheel for that. But what's nice is the color mixing leads into this technique here, the blending. If I'm working in a sky, and I'll come to my main image in a moment, but if I wanted my sky to kind of blend from this lighter blue to now a mid blue, one of the things I'm going to do is make sure I've pre-mixed those colors, and I'm working with a dirty brush and I'm making sure that the paints are all still wet. And as I come in and I start layering, okay, this is going to allow me to achieve a gradient or a more blended effect. And anywhere that it feels too harsh, okay, take that dirty brush, rinse it to totally clean, or just grab a larger damp brush. And you can kind of go back over, I would go light to dark, kind of just dragging, just incorporating, okay? So that has allowed me, with a plan, to create some nice blends. You can achieve it through layered as well, layered blends. So if I was working in an area of my landscape where I know, like say all through here, I need a variety of yellows, golds, and even really deep browns, that's the colors I'm going to focus on. Those are the colors I'm going to mix up on my wax paper and then focus on that area for part of the class. So blending, I really recommend having a plan. You could do blending that is, like I said, more of a layered approach. So I might have laid down a dark color, then in a subsequent part of the class, I'm adding lighter colors. Just trying to show you nice and close. Can come in, try to add highlights nearby. So as the paint is still wet, it will blend, but for true blending with acrylics, you do need to sort of have a little bit of a plan ahead of time. Okay, taping and dry brushing. What's nice with these techniques is these are gonna allow you to have a bit more precision, a bit more I guess, subtle control. So for taping, you might use the green tape somewhere where you have a crisp edge. So for a lot of us, that might be our horizon line. So if I just want to use on my sample board here, this sort of sky that I've created, and now I want to, we'd have to hope that this is fully dry, which it's not, but we will pretend. I'm going to tape off the sky. And that's gonna let me create a crisp edge here where the sky is meeting the ground. So now if I were to come in using that green tape, okay, with like a ground color, this is just a quick example of how the masking tape can help you. This could also be done in specific shapes. You could rip the tape on a curve if you have a hill or a mountain. But the tape is going to give you that edge that I actually painted, if you can see, in the opposite direction of the tape. I'm going to allow that to dry as well. You can hit it with a hairdryer if you like. And then when you remove that taped edge, this is a weird experiment. Yeah, because I didn't allow the blue to dry. It did come up a bit, but you can see that nice crisp line that the tape provides. So taping is useful if you need an edge. Like I said, if you need to conceal a part of the painting that you want to protect. And then one last technique is dry brushing. So if I wanted to come in and add maybe some wispy clouds or some wispy grass down in these areas, I'm going to take something up on a big fluffy brush, could be a fan brush. I'm going to tap off any excess paint. So there's barely any paint on this brush, okay? And then I'm able to kind of fluff in with my fan brush. Or like I said, I actually really prefer just a standard brush. For dry brush, I'm getting a little bit of paint, tapping off any excess, and it's gonna let me build subtle layers. I can do the dry brushing with any color I want if I wanted to touch up these blues, but not have it be too strong. Maybe I want a little control. You can see how I can layer, but it's picking up like the texture of the bristles of my brush, okay? One last one. Down here. So it's such thin layers when you're dry brushing that you can really control things easily. You can add clouds, mist, shadows, highlights with that dry brush technique. The very last thing that I will say is it can be a bit of a strange feeling as you work with your actual colors over top of the underpainting you created. Sorry, just trying to give myself some room. Okay, so you want to look at your reference, right? You want to trust yourself. I know that where I have this deep orangey red, it's actually a blue, right? Or a blue-green. And then where I have maybe like a yellow, it might be purple, and so on, okay? So trusting that you've done a solid job with your underpainting is now the fun part of incorporating in, right? Where it's red here, the opposite is true. It's like a blue-green. And what some professional artists find is they actually like when that underpainting peeks through a bit. Could be because it's thinly applied. It could be on an edge. It could be, I'm just trying to work quickly so you can see how vibrant these blues are now feeling as I'm building them over my orange, okay? How rich and painterly that can start to feel. So sometimes when you're looking at a really masterfully done painting and you see the edge of something, you might see little lines of like red or orange peeking through. And that's the beauty of having this sketch. But of course, as you build in those realistic colors, you're gonna slowly work your way down in various layers. Like I'm gonna slowly start to add the details here that I see, but with the right size tool, right? Getting to smaller brushes and just starting to get the control that I am after. So as you build it in, Okay, trust the process. This is where you might just start working on individual areas at any given time. Or if you've mixed custom paints, like I started in with my blues here, I'll want to try and finish any other areas of my sky, like over here, that have those blues before I move on. And I can keep in mind all the same techniques that I just went through in terms of, oh yeah, I'm going to tape off my horizon line, right? I might use some dry brushing. I might use some glazing. So all of these here are at your disposal as you work on your landscapes. Good luck and have fun.